All right, everyone. How's everyone doing? I'm Josh Dubois of JD Strategic. We're on episode 9 of the Conquer the Mind podcast. I am very excited today. We have a serial entrepreneur, a CEO, someone started his journey as a D1 athlete, later turned himself into an entrepreneur, although he was probably an entrepreneur from an early age, which we're going to dive into. So he's really had a bunch of different passions, a lot of different interests, and he's been really successful in all of them. He was even acknowledged recently in Entrepreneur Magazine, which we'll definitely dive into. So a very accomplished, not only athlete, serial entrepreneur, and today he's the CEO of Send Me a Pro, which started off as Send Me a Trainer as well. So a lot of really interesting background, a really cool concept. I kind of probably hinting off something you said, kind of like the Uber of home services. So a really cool idea, a lot of interest with home services. So we're going to dive into your background, the opportunity, and all things franchising, all things mindset. I know you're big on personal growth, mindset development, personal branding. So all really big topics that I'm interested in as well. So super excited, Bary. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And usually I kind of start off the podcast with asking for kind of just a brief introduction. Usually, sometimes I ask people to start off with high school, and that kind of scares a lot of people. They say it's too far away. But I know just going through your background, you started even before high school. Around the age of 12, you were a street performer. So could you kind of walk us through how just at such an early age, I think that's so fascinating how you're already kind of out and about doing things. So were you surrounded
Yeah.
by other entrepreneurs in your family, or how did that all like start? Can you just dive us into how your entrepreneurial journey really
Yeah.
started?
Yeah, no, for sure. And, I think as a family, we always did like the 4th of July, we sold lemonade, things like that at a young age. So that was something we were always around. But, I actually got a job at Subway as a Subway mascot in Boulder, Colorado. So I'd walk around the outdoor mall in a big giant sub, and I would just walk
Yeah.
around, and that was like their marketing tactic. But while I was doing that, I saw a lot of other street performers, juggling, doing magic tricks. They had like 50 to 100 people watching them. And at the end of the show, they put their hat, they had a box. People were just running, they were just tipping them. I was like, that's where the money's at. How do I
Yeah.
now do something like that? And long story short, I became good friends with one of the performers, and he took me in and mentored me and taught me how to do some magic tricks.
Yeah.
And I started to practice, and after practicing for a while, I actually developed my own show, and that show started to do well. I was making good money. I never had to work a summer job again, because every summer I would just go and spend my time, doing my magic tricks and
Yeah.
evolving my show. And I took my show to another level by having an escape artist. I got into a straitjacket, and I would get out of this straitjacket while I was chained up with all this chains.
Oh my
Um,
God. No
so that was a
way. You
lot
were
of
doing
fun.
that?
Yep.
Wow.
So
That's crazy. All that's super fascinating. Was it, I'm kind of curious always with kind of the passion, the profit, was it the magic tricks that like caught your attention, or you were kind of watching the exchange of money at such an early age and you were like, wow, that's pretty interesting. What was
good
it? Obviously,
question.
if you the commission.
Well, good question. I would say both.
Yeah.
Number one, I love performing. That was a lot of fun. Getting on
Mhm.
stage, building my confidence up,
Yeah.
learning how to ask people to now tip you well,
Yeah.
right? And as I got more experience, I learned how to be a better communicator and to
Mm,
communicate to an audience so they could tip you
mm,
very well. And I took that to a whole new level from the time I started to, after doing that, after a couple of years.
mm.
But that was a lot of fun because I was able to learn magic. And at the same time, I was working for myself. And that was kind of like with the entrepreneur spirit. And then I found a nice hobby and something I was passionate about.
Hmm, that's super interesting. One thing I'd be curious on, and some of the topics we've kind of dove into on the podcast, kind of a lot of people that have that success, and especially a lot of people that start at such an early age, they usually didn't have a ton of options growing up where today I always kind of joke around with like the NFTs, crypto, finance. There's so many different industries to kind of get wealthy on. People kind of lack taking action towards finding that passion, finding that why. I'm kind of curious, was it kind of like a lack of options at an early age where you felt like you had to start working at such an early age, or what kind of initially got you like really outside the door? Like I'm thinking of me at 12 years old, and I'm probably around the neighborhood like playing basketball with my neighbors. I'm not thinking, how to start making money at such an early age.
Well, it started off just being ambitious at a young age. Being ambitious. It wasn't just about the making the money. It's more about achieving something and
Mm,
getting addicted to achieving something,
mm,
and accomplishing something. So
mm,
I'm really big into the mindset, the philosophy. I don't do things for the money. I do things because I'm passionate and excites me, right?
mm.
And I continue to evolve that. And that's how I became a personal trainer,
Yeah,
because I was passionate about helping people. And even now, passionate about helping people becoming business owners, right? So that same original passion has evolved throughout my entire career.
yeah. No, it's so powerful. And a lot of times I did a lot of marketing with a lot of people in like the entertainment industry. And a lot of times when you talk to people, the first question they ask is, how do I start making money off this? And, they haven't even put in like a few hours of work yet, and they want to, put their name on a shirt and start selling it. So I always say, when you have that passion, you have that why, it's so much easier to go about doing the motions, and you find different ways to provide value. And when you really focus on helping other people, that's when, the profit ends up coming down later down the road, when you figure out that why and figure out that passion. So I think that's really interesting how you had that all going from such an early age. So can you later, you transitioned, you said you were a personal trainer. I know you were a D1 athlete as well. So going from an early age, you kind of had these entrepreneurial aspects. You're starting to make money. You're starting to work on your personal brand as well. So what were kind of the next steps after that?
Well, I really fell into sports throughout high school, and I've been, I grew up playing sports my entire life, but I
Mm,
really started taking it serious in high school,
mm,
and that's where, I learned a lot about, just personal development, mindset, philosophy, team, working with like-minded people, and I've been fortunate enough. I've been on winning teams and I've been on losing teams, and I've
mm,
seen the cultural difference. I've seen the people difference, right?
yeah.
And that's where, I was very fortunate to play high school football and also then play college football. And those both great experience. I've had great coaches, great mentors. But the biggest takeaway that football did for me was taught me how to really have a good work ethic and how to
Mm,
define that, because everyone thinks to have a good work ethic. It's easy. Everyone, we like to think the best of ourselves, which is good. We want to be
right.
more of an optimist. That's good for sure. But
Mm,
how do you really now really brutally focus on what are you willing to do to prepare and to train, right? To really evolve your athletic ability. And once you realize that you're capable of doing it and you just have to put the time and effort and the training in, then
mm,
really anything is accomplishable. And it's the same thing in the business world, right? That same work ethic, that mindset, that philosophy
yeah.
of that tenacity to go
Mm,
after something is such a huge asset for someone.
mm. No, that's really powerful. And one of the kind of the questions, as you're kind of an athlete and entrepreneur, one of kind of the natural questions is, everyone kind of says, business is really just another sport, and everyone kind of has that competitive spirit. And one of the things that I think is so impactful of your sports background is the best athletes, and you have to be a really good athlete to play D1 football. Like we can't even kid around about that. But those are the people after a loss, they're in the weight room right after the game. They're watching film the next day. They learn from those losses and adjust. And that's really the biggest thing in business, because everyone's gonna hit those walls, they're gonna hit those challenges, but can you pivot from that? So I think you kind of answered that question with kind of the balance between sports and entrepreneur spirit. So I think that's really helpful. And as you're a personal trainer, you're playing D1 football. How does like all of that evolve as you're probably taking college courses, you're an athlete, you're a personal trainer, you also have this entrepreneurial aspect, and how are you going about like all these different
Yeah.
things?
So I became a certified trainer probably about a couple of years after college and football,
Okay.
or really more like towards my senior year. But indirectly, my freshman year, junior year, I started to just help other athletes, to train. And I
Mm,
had a really good mentor that was a speed and conditioning coach. I was like, hey, you know what? That's a pretty cool job, right? So
yeah.
that kind of triggered. But my major was exercise science and sports management. So I learned a lot about the anatomy, how the human movement works, things like that.
Mm,
But really, once my mindset was I want to play in the NFL. That was my
yeah.
initial, full attempt. But then after the dust settles, and once I kind of now facing reality of what am I going to do now, I wanted to find something that what I was passionate about and I was excited about, which was helping people. And that's
Mm,
where I've kind of, over the years already started to help people towards their athletic training, just
mm,
younger classmen and just mentoring them. And so I was already a trainer, but now I
yeah.
formalized and became a trainer kind of shortly after. And then I got a job in DC, and then in the DC metro, and I got a job, and I was one of the top personal trainers my first month to sell the most amount of personal training out of all the locations. So
Huh.
it was a big deal, and everyone was telling me, how did you do that? I just talked to people and just help people. But that kind of was the trigger. And when I
Yeah.
was training everyone would always tell to me, everyone would always ask, hey, Bary, they were canceling, they didn't show up, and I wanted to find out, well, why are a lot of clients canceling? And that's when I started to offer my services to go to them. I said,
Mm,
hey, if I come to you, would that make a difference? I said, Bary, if you come to me, that'd be a game changer. So I said, okay, great. I'll start coming to you. So long story short, I started to now train people in their homes just because it was convenient for them. And I couldn't
yeah.
keep up with the demand anymore. So I started to hire all these other trainers to go train these clients that I couldn't keep up with.
Huh.
And that's kind of when Send Me a Trainer was born. And the in-home personal training service was launched then.
Wow, that's powerful, and I love how just one thing really leads to the next, and you learn all these different lessons. And one thing I definitely want to address is someone that has accomplished a lot of success, and especially at such an early age of yourself. I think the importance of setting goals. You mentioned your goal is to be in the NFL, and although a lot of times if you are accomplishing your goals, maybe your goals are a little too easy. You're not challenging yourself enough, but kind of learning from that and being able to transition to the next thing. I just think that's so powerful. Can you talk on? I think a lot of people don't even like, if you ask a lot of people, I'd say like 95% of people, you ask them what their goals are, they would probably probably stutter, struggle, not know really what to say. How important has been setting goals in your life been? And how has that really like transitioned into some of your success? Or maybe it hasn't. Maybe you don't set goals at all, and maybe it's not important.
Yeah, no, it's definitely important to set goals. I always say aim for the stars and land
Mm,
on the moon, right?
mm,
And that means if you're shooting really high, but if you land
yeah,
on the moon, that's still great. There's nothing that's still beyond where a lot of people ever get, right?
yeah. Still out of this universe.
Exactly, exactly. So, I always believe anything is achievable, right? Failure is the cost of learning. So
Mm,
don't be afraid to fail. Fail quick, fail a lot, fail fast,
mm,
accelerate your discovery process, right?
mm,
Don't be stuck on riding a dead horse thinking it's going to perform in a new way
yeah.
so you got to be able to fail fast, fail quick, and aim high.
Mm. Yeah, that's really powerful. And I think those are really good words. I really like that. And I think that's really powerful for anyone just when you're going through life, going through the motions. A lot of times anxiety, depression is such a big thing. And, I've definitely been there before. And a lot of it's just a lack of, if you don't have that purpose in life, you're kind of just going through the motions. It's almost hard to feel happy if you don't really know what you're working towards. So I think that's really important and something I've clearly seen as I've kind of watched your journey as well. So you kind of mentioned transitioning into Send Me a Trainer a little bit. So you did D1 football, you started becoming a personal trainer, you started to kind of see what's working in the industry, what's not working. So how did that all start to work? And I know on your LinkedIn you also worked at Bounce Fitness as well. So how does that all kind of start to play in?
Yeah. So the original in-home personal training business was actually called Bounce Fitness. And
Okay.
that was basically an in-home personal training service, like a concierge service for personal trainers. And we
Mm,
ran that for a decade.
okay.
Um, and when I first started, my brother, my business partner, he was doing his MBA at Kellogg's in Northwestern. So he
Mm,
specialized in entrepreneurship, and he was seeing the traction I was getting. So we kind of partner up, put our heads together, and now really build a premium concierge service
mm,
for fitness professionals, trainers, yoga instructors, tennis coaches, you name it.
yeah.
Prenatal. We had a great network of trainers. We match you with the right trainer. The trainer came to you. They gave you a custom program, right?
Mm,
So we ran that for a decade, and then we had a lot of success, and then we realized we changed the name when we actually started franchising in the end of 2019, 2020 is when we started franchising Send Me a Trainer, which was basically the same thing as Bounce Fitness.
okay. That's super interesting. One, I think it's really fascinating how you're almost like on top of the home service trend, like before people were even talking about it and before it really even became big, especially during COVID. I'm kind of curious, how was your time in the fitness industry and you kind of started the home service fitness industry? What were you seeing in some of the retail fitness industries and what were some of the things you felt like kind of needed to be changed and how are you kind of seeing that large demand? Because obviously, you have the Gold's Gym and the Planet
Yep.
Fitness and all these huge gyms. So what kind of made you think there's an opportunity here?
So I started off working at a big box gym.
Okay.
That was my first job right after college. And what happened is I had a lot of clients, and clients were canceling on me.
Hmm.
And I was wondering, well, why are you canceling? I got a lot of cancellations of people. Oh, I can't make it today. The traffic, my
Yeah.
kids got sick, meetings took longer. So I was like, okay, like this is a real big problem.
Hmm.
And that's when I was like, okay, well, what's the solution? So I started to ask my clients, hey, what if I came to you? Right. Like, and then that's when they said, Bear, if you came to me, that would be a game changer. So
Hmm.
long story short, I started to go to all my clients' homes. And from there, the word got out and I couldn't keep up with the demand. And then that's
Yeah.
when it naturally went viral.
Huh. That's really interesting. And I really like the idea, just the home service kind of fitness trainer. It just seems very kind of like short, simple, and especially nowadays with the home service trend, people want kind of that low investment, low overhead, easy to get started. I'd be curious. I know we kind of mentioned you were featured on the cover of the Entrepreneur magazine, which huge accomplishment. That's awesome. And I think as any entrepreneur, is something that a lot of people dream about, kind of waking up to that one day. But obviously, that doesn't just happen. What kind of gave you kind of like the validation that this was an idea you want to start franchising and really kind of bring to the market? Because a lot of people, they have these really strong ideas, but what gave you like the validation that, hey, this is gonna work?
It's funny. So when we launched Send Me a Trainer, which is like the Uber for personal trainers, we never thought of franchising.
Hmm.
And we started off in TechCrunch and Silicon Valley, going to pitch night, doing things like
Yeah.
that. Um, so we were in the tech startup world, is what
Hmm.
we started off. And we got a lot of PR. And that's at that time, we also built our own proprietary technology, which is like the Uber. You download the app, right? You submit a request, you see the trainers, you connect, you make payments, you keep
Yeah.
track of payments, you can read a review like a Yelp experience, right?
Hmm.
So we got a lot of PR around our app that we've developed. And then people from all around the nation start to reach out to us saying, hey, I just read your article. I love it. And
Yeah.
I notice you're not in my area. And I was wondering if I could franchise you guys here. And
Huh.
at that time, like, no, we're not franchising. Right. We're going to be a tech company. Right. So, and that's when the more we heard it, the more we realized there's definitely a franchise opportunity. But the more we thought about it, the more we realized there was an opportunity to franchise that is in line with our values of having boots on the ground. So when you franchise, the benefit, you get boots on the ground to now activate in the local market. So we're big on getting involved in your community. We participate in the 5K races, the back to school night. We go to the farmers market. We partner up with the HOA communities that have access to all the homeowners, right?
Mm,
These are our go-to market strategies. So
yeah.
franchising is in line with by having boots on the ground to really develop and squeeze and activate that territory more.
Huh.
And after we thought about it, we said, okay, you know what? Let's start franchising. And shortly after, we just had explosive growth.
Hmm. That's interesting. Had you ever like heard about franchising before you started the business, or was it literally kind of like something like, I know the jokes everyone falls into franchising. I just think it's so interesting how like unless you have family in franchising, no one really knows about it. So it's just so
Yeah.
interesting.
I did have a close friend that his parents had something very similar to a franchise. They ran it like
Okay.
a franchise. Um, so I had some inspiration there, but I read a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And yeah, and that real takeaway really hits the check mark of franchising a lot. And that's where I was like, okay, following the guidance of this mastermind,
Yeah.
franchising is right in line with that logic. So that gave me a lot of inspiration on which side of the coin you want to be on.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. Like you just don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like the systems are really there for you to succeed if you want to. And yeah, franchising really just allows you to grow and scale a business in all these other markets, all these other territories. And especially once you do have that validation and progress, it makes it a lot easier to start to scale. So overall, you're the CEO, founder, send me a pro, send me a trainer. Could you walk for the audience listening? What is send me a pro? What is send me a trainer? What is like the good? How are franchise owners
Yep.
deriving revenue? What's happening for the customers? Just overall, kind of what's kind of that high level of what the franchise is doing.
Yeah, so we have two brands in the market now. We have Send Me a Trainer.
Mm,
That's really good for someone who's more looking for a franchise opportunity. And what's happened over the years, a lot of fitness investors that have normally bought a lot of boutique fitnesses, they are now getting fatigued because the big discovery, those tend to be fads. They're high overhead, high
yeah,
costs, high barriers. So a lot of those particular investors are now looking for alternatives, but still in the fitness space, because historically speaking, I'm sure people like to invest in fitness.
yeah.
So if you're already convinced, I want a fitness franchise, I want something that's durable, right? Send Me a Trainer could be a good fit for you.
Mm,
Now, Send Me a Pro is more of a great way to diversify your services. So beyond just buying one franchise, you're getting a portfolio of home service franchise concepts:
mm,
tutoring, music, dog walking,
yeah,
house cleaning, pressure cleaning, whatever it may be. The list can just go on, that are normally independent franchise concepts. Now you have all these franchises under one umbrella. And that's why we're disrupting the franchising sector, because it's a great way to mitigate your risk as an investor. Because people ask me all the time, well, what if dog walking doesn't work out? Well, who cares? You can add and remove services to your platform.
yeah.
And that's really someone that's looking for risk mitigation, scalability, that's a good fit for them.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. If you want one industry, it really is kind of like almost everyone says recession resistance, kind of like the magic words in franchising. This at least kind of hedges your risk towards those different industries. Each industry itself is very profitable, but the option to have another big word is kind of the multiple revenue streams and that monthly recurring revenue. So I think that's a really attractive offer. And kind of what you're talking about is the Semi Pro Launchpad, and really being the first to have multiple services under that one business model. And I also kind of was reading really the first of franchise technology almost. So it is a really cool
Yeah.
idea, and a lot of people that I talk to, especially in corporate America, they want something easy, low overhead, lower investment. And another big thing is being able to manage it through an app on your phone is really big. People just like the simplicity of that, being able to travel, focus on multiple different things sometimes. So I think that's a really attractive offer. Can you talk to me about the app a little bit? What does that kind of look like for a customer experience, for example? So if someone, for example, if I needed like a service for my home, what would that look like? I download Send Me a Trainer app, and what does that
Yeah.
look
Yep. So depending if you send me a pro or send me a trainer, but they're very similar user experience. You download the app, you pick the service that you're looking for, like let's say house cleaning, and then you can now book and purchase a clean, and you can have that reoccurring, one-time clean, whatever it may be. And then now, someone's going to show up and schedule your appointment. So it's really the core business model is connectivity, connecting clients with local providers and having the best user experience. Because what we believe is whoever can reduce the amount of steps that the customer has to go through is going to win that customer, versus having a long dragged process where you're haggling, you're price shopping, you're going back and
like?
forth. People are fatigued from that. People are looking for simple, easy booking at a fair rate with great pros, and that's where we really shine the most.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I kind of almost think like Amazon, where it's kind of like the one-stop shop if you're looking for, a book, a table, food, all these different examples, but you focus in on those services so that it really is kind of a one-stop shop. I know in marketing, everyone likes to hype up we're a one-stop shop, and no one really even knows what that means, but you guys
Yeah.
really are kind of that one-stop shop of home services. So I think that's really interesting. And so for say someone wants to download the app, or how do you guys even go about getting people to download the app? Is that a challenge, for example?
So, and the way we get our customers typically is two ways, like for a franchise location. So the franchise owner is going to run Facebook ads, Google ads to generate leads and traffic.
Got
And then also we do a lot of localization. So we like to be present in our local market. A big part of that is we like to partner up with local businesses like HOA communities, senior care facilities, apartment complexes, participate in the local events, right? And that's really back to having boots on the ground. So the combination of the business development
Yeah.
and the online marketing is how franchisees acquire new customers.
Mhm. Okay, that makes sense. So people, they download the app, they have kind of the national marketing, and then kind of a local customized marketing plan. They have people downloading the app, and then is it the franchise owner, or is it the franchisor responsibility to find those home services?
So the franchisor, we're going to work with them to select which services you want to start off with.
Okay.
So, and that's where each franchisor may vary just depending on the location, but typically we recommend 3 to 5 services. And then from there, you march down the field and add more services to the platform.
Okay, that makes sense. And how do you go about kind of managing like the customer experience? I'm sure you talk about connectivity, being able to kind of connect with that home service provider, and that relationship really being so key. And I know nowadays it's kind of key, you have those strong Google reviews, those strong so when people look you up, you're top 3 on those Google reviews, people want to see you. How do you ensure that you're getting kind of like the top home services on the app, and how do you ensure that those customers are getting that good customer experience?
So the main thing is what even led to Send Me a Pro, because what we've learned with Send Me a Trainer,
Mm,
okay, is once you get the client to like you for one service, they
mm,
like and they trust you.
yeah,
97% likely they're going to use you for other services that you may offer. And that's how Send Me a Pro was born,
yeah,
right? So the key is once you get the client for one service, we want to win that client over by having a great experience. For example, once you have a service with us, we'll call you and say,
yeah,
hey, this is Bary, Send Me a Pro. By the way, how was the clean today? Oh, okay, great. But if you ever need anything, let me know, right? And we also offer multiple different services.
mm,
So, and now, like, oh, okay, great. And now they can create that awareness. So we always say own the relationship with the homeowner, and that really goes a long way.
mm. Yeah, no, that's really powerful. Just because the home service industry, it really is a booming industry. So being able to control all those different services, and 97%, that's a really strong number. Just when you think of one particular home service like dog walking, you mentioned, that alone is like a recurring revenue source. And then when you mention all these unlimited home service models, and then you can kind of craft all the different models to your market. So I think that's really interesting. And can we kind of walk through kind of the growth of Semi-Pro over the years? I know you kind of launched your first one in North Carolina, I want to say. So can you kind
So
of,
yeah,
yeah,
so we launched Send Me a Trainer in 2020.
yeah,
And the majority of our franchisees are Send Me a Trainer. And the phase that we're in now is now everyone's in the process of launching Send Me a Pro and now adding more services to their platform. Now, some of them will stay as Send Me a Trainer, and some of them will expand and evolve into the Send Me a Pro. Now, we also have Send Me a Pro, a lot of recent people that we've awarded in the past 3-4 months, they're launching directly just with Send Me a Pro as well.
okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That's
So it's still
interesting.
early on the Send Me a Pro side. And what people are doing, like the people who are buying Send Me a Pro are people that already are convinced in home services. If you're not convinced that home services is, a big opportunity, then you're just too early on the process to really, get to the finish line with us. So typically a lot of our candidates, they come here, they already believe in home services, or even they've looked at other franchise concepts. They looked at other, franchise concepts as validation of what's trending, of what they want to now prioritize on our platform. We had multiple people buy our franchise that they were this close to buy another home-based franchise like
Yeah,
house cleaning or lawn care or roofing or whatever it may be. And when they see this, their logic is, hey, I could still do that franchise that I was about to buy, but now I could do it here, but now also mitigate risk and add and remove services as I see fit. It's a
yeah.
no-brainer.
No, that's really interesting. Yeah, because as I talk to a lot of candidates and home services, typically, or honestly, sometimes people don't even think home services, like you said, but once you bring up the idea of home services and the idea that that's a business model, people get really excited by it. And then you bring up the idea of Semi-Pro, it just kind of adds another extra element to that. I think that's really interesting. And I like
Yeah.
how, you have Semi-Trainer as well, and people can kind of transition and offer those different services. So let's say someone is interested, they do make that decision. What is like the process like to get operations running? How long would that take, for example, to get running?
So once you're awarded, it typically could take 4 to 8 weeks to
Okay.
launch the business, depending how fast you go through training, onboarding, material, but typically it's about 4 to 8 weeks.
Okay. That's good to know. And you mentioned territory there. How do you guys figure out the different territory of a market?
So territory starts of a population of 50,000 people.
Okay. And we kind of talk about franchising, the power of systems. Can you walk us through what kind of help with real estate selection you would do for a candidate? So say someone's in a market, they might be questioning, although I don't know how you could even question the power of all home services at this point, but say
Yeah.
someone's questioning whether home services would be profitable in my market. Well, can you talk to someone about kind of the processes and systems you guys have
Yeah.
in place to help someone identify what a strong market would look like?
Yeah. So a few key things on that is everyone's hiring different type of services for the home, on the home, around the home, and for the home and in the home. But now it's more of localization, the price. You have to set the price to be more in line with, to accommodate the needs and the going rate for that specific market.
Mhm.
And we go through an exercise on a price exercise on how to set the rate that's acceptable for all these different services in that market. So that's a pricing exercise. But also we do a territory exercise during your discovery process. Well, we will show you a few different options because some people buy 10, 15 territories, some people buy one or two, just depending on the appetite of the investor. We have some franchisors, their net worth is over $1 million plus. They're not going to buy one territory. They want to deploy 250 or $500,000 for a
Right.
bigger opportunity, right? Then we have some people that just want to start off with one, their career transition, whatever it may be, and that's fine. We kind of find the right territory to suit them. And during that time, we'll kind of go through population, household income, things like that as well. Some data around the territory.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful as people, a lot of times, corporate America, they're trying to hedge their risks. And people, a lot of times, I like to say they kind of discount themselves before even evaluating the opportunity. So just helping people better understand that, you guys have these systems, these resources, you've done, you've figured out in all these different industries what works, what doesn't work, so that rather than them trying to stay up at night trying to make assumptions that typically aren't correct, we can actually get those questions answered for them totally free of charge as well. So it's just so unique in franchising, I think, and something I just wanted to bring up. So
Yeah, and by the way, 95% of startups fail, or I think if it's even higher, right?
yeah.
So why do people buy a franchise? Just because you're not a startup,
Mm,
right? You're just that itself. Buying any
right.
franchise automatically is a different risk category,
Mm,
right? Because you have, like you're saying, the systems, the infrastructure, other people that have done it and that are doing it,
right.
right? So, and that's where a lot of people that are looking for something very stable, very certain, very predictable, franchising in general is a very good option for you.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And a lot of times there is like some like stereotype, I feel like, with startup culture where a lot of people like saying, I have my own startup, I have my own business, but there's kind of like almost a stigma with I'm a franchise owner compared to I'm a startup for some reason. Whereas like you said, the 95% number, the success rates, it's almost like it really doesn't make sense because it's so hard to come up with that, that life changing, that Elon Musk, that Amazon type idea, like a send me trainer idea. But rather than, trying to spend 10, 20, 30 years waiting for like the light bulb to switch, your life was made because you took so many actions in all these different areas, which really led to that. So I think that's a big lesson with a lot of people, especially younger. We have this kind of analysis paralysis, trying to evaluate all these different opportunities rather than just trying different things. And once you do try those different things, you may have that light bulb moment where you could potentially franchise an idea. But this idea of franchising, you have the systems in place if you want to be successful. And like you said, if you have that 1 million net worth, a 10 million net worth, they have the scalability where you're not just buying one store, you're not just an owner operator, for example. You're a corporate business owner, scaling a real operation, and they've already dealt with the hardship. You have the resources in place for when these tough times happen. And I think that's a good transition into, you guys are a home service model, it's online, it's technology, it's an app. Do you guys have some sort of like proprietary technology, or how does kind of the technology work of sending a trainer?
So we've developed all of our technology in-house, our team and develop. So it's all proprietary in-house technology.
Okay,
Yeah. So we're
that's
not
powerful.
white labeling, we're not doing any of that. It's really everything is in-house. And that's the core of what we do is we build technology, we build software. That's what we've done a really good job of as well.
Yeah. No, it really is like a tech opportunity in home services and, really the Uber of home services. I really like the idea. It's really attractive. And as we're kind of talking about candidates, they might be evaluating the opportunity. And one thing that's really big to understand is it really is that two-way interview process. A lot of times people come in and they think they can just window watch or window shop, kind of go through all these different franchises, not really show a lot of interest, a lot of engagement. And you got to understand, franchise developers, they're getting hundreds of leads per week. They want the top qualified candidates. So if you think you're just going to show little interest, say, I just want to kind of throw some money at it and do my thing, it's very hard to, really make that really work. It really is that two-way interview process, making sure that the culture is oriented on both sides. So can you walk someone that may be interested, someone that wants to maybe go through the process? What does that process look like? And
Yeah.
how does that education process look like?
Yeah, for sure. You made a good point because it is a two-way process because one thing we don't sell franchises. We award franchises to people who we really believe in. And
Yeah.
that's important to us, right? And we're not desperate. We're not looking just to sell franchises. We're looking to put the brand in the right hands. And we
Mm,
take a lot of pride in that. And
mm,
that's important to us. So, and it's funny. So yes, we look at candidates, but we really look at the behavior of candidates during the discovery process. So if
mm,
someone shows up, to a meeting and they haven't watched the information and the videos that we've sent to them a week before that meeting, and we ask them to carefully go through the material, come prepared. If you can't come prepared to a meeting, Imagine how you're going to come prepared to our meetings once you become a franchise owner.
Mm,
That's a red flag for us. So we really set the tone with candidates as like, look, we have a very efficient process where you can have multiple opportunities to go through a lot of different components of our business.
yeah.
But one thing we ask is to now follow the process and to complete the process. And I always tell candidates, you don't need to be in decision mode. You need to be in discovery mode. There's a big difference. Don't find a reason to say no. Find a
Yeah,
reason and let in the next conversation, we're going to talk about these things. Right.
right.
So, and 95% of the time is just if something pops up, it's just something that needs a little bit more clarification. And that's where we really give the right clarification. And our goal is to provide our candidates with all the right information so they can make a fully informed best decision if this is a good fit for them, as well as we will decide during the discovery process if we mutually feel that this would be a good fit for the both of us.
Mm. I think that's a really, really good point, that it's a discovery process, not a decision process. And I was talking about the paralysis analysis. People are really going through the process rather than using it as an education, but looking for what's that first reason for me to say no. And then I can just go back to my life and kind of resume and kind of feel good about my 9 to 5 day job. But reality is, if you even really made that initial call, showed that initial interest, you probably have some interest in really taking those next steps in your career. So it does yourself no justice, because it really is, the only thing it costs you is really your time. But if you are thinking about it, we're going to save you a lot of time so that you can make that proper decision in that education process. Because rather than trying to find a different way to say no, the next stage in the process is so that you can continue to evaluate those no's. And like you said, it may turn out to continue to be a no, and that's fine, but we at least get those hard questions answered, and you can really get a complete picture of what that day in the life could potentially look like.
And you know what I found out, and I've heard this really a lot. And I come from a lot of business coaching, mental, physical, the mindset, Tony Robbins philosophy, things like that as well. These people that they have a undecisive capability that they had. It's not just you see in the when they are starting to, like, say, sometimes buy a franchise, but oftentimes and this is what I talk to candidates, it's like your track record of how you've done certain things tells a story, right? How long did it take you to pick a major, right? For example, oh, I couldn't pick one. Okay. How long did it take you to now, let's say, get married? Oh, I dated someone for 15 years. And well, what took so long, right? Were you not decisive, right? And you keep looking at these undecisive moments as a character we develop subconsciously, and we're not aware about it. You tell someone like, oh, I'm not, of course I'm decisive. We all think we're decisive,
Mm.
right? But undecisiveness is a cancer, right? And that's where, if you look just history, the fork in the road, the top successful people, the best quarterbacks, right? What do they all have in common? The best CEOs, what do they all have in common? Is they're decisive.
Mm.
So it's allowing, so as you speak to candidates, is I'm also curious of how decisive has their history of big decisions in their life or other moments in their life. How decisive were they? And how long did they have cold feet for? And that would tell you a glimpse of what type of person you're dealing with. Now, we've dealt with a lot of people that are indecisive, and that's okay,
Mm.
right? But we talk to them about this point so we can bring that to their awareness,
Yeah.
so they can realize, you're right, I do have a track record. And unless I make change, my fate and the amount of zeros I have in my bank account will stay the same.
Mm. That's really powerful. And that's really the name of the show, with Conquer the Mind. With, I think, and I've been there before, and that's really why, they say you're in the greatest position to help others, where you were once in that position. And I felt that way, where you're really subconsciously just going through the motions, where the days, the weeks, the months, eventually the years pass by, and you realize you're really kind of in that same position. And that's why the mindset, I always say, once you can conquer the mind, you start living consciously in your life. You know what your why is, you know what your purpose is. It's easy to get out of bed at 5:30 in the morning when you know what your why is, when you know what your purpose is. Obviously not all the time, but when you
course.
have
Yeah.
that why, when you have that purpose, it just makes things so much easier. And being decisive, I just think it's really powerful. And your life, you tried all these different things and it just continued to lead to that next exercise. And you mentioned Tony Robbins. One thing that I just want to throw out to all the viewers, I've added to my morning routine. Tony Robbins has this priming exercise, and it's super powerful for anyone. If you're looking for a great way to start your morning, just feel super energized, grateful for the world, and really ready to attack the world. Because I think another purpose of the podcast, a lot of people are struggling. I always say, if you're feeling helpless, just get helpful, start helping other people, and you start to forget about your own issues, and it makes life a lot easier. And kind of goes back to how we started with, you provide value to other people, the profit will eventually come, but you got to focus on the right things, focus on your why, focus on your purpose, focus on your passion. So that was really powerful. And I know our time's starting to wind down now. One thing I definitely wanted to ask for someone that may still be interested, they make the decision, they start operating. What does kind of that day in the life look like for a franchise owner? And I know there's so many different models, so I'm sure you guys might have a bunch of different models that you offer as well. So what does kind of the different day in the life look like of someone potentially interested?
Yeah. So could we have different type of models, passive,
Yeah.
investor, operator, but the key functions regardless is you need about 4 hours a day or so for at least 6 months. And in the beginning, you're hyper focused on onboarding your providers, right? That's the first couple of months. You're putting your team of pros, creating profiles, running background checks, verifying them. And once you kind of complete the onboarding, which now you have your batch of pros, now you shift that time into local marketing, right? Local events, participating at the 5K races, the farmers market,
Yeah.
partnering up. Again, I can't emphasize these HOA communities, that now plug you into all the homeowners immediately is getting that one relationship with an HOA that can send an email blast, and we give them exclusive pricing. So all the homeowners that live there, they have exclusive pricing. And then they'll email blast all the homeowners announcing our partnership. And that really is a great way to really scale up quickly.
Yeah, and I really like how you mentioned the HOA partnerships, because a lot of times when I'm speaking to candidates, and we kind of go back to people in corporate America, they want to hedge their risk. They're looking for the best ways to find clients, to find customers. And a lot of times people ask about national relationships, national vendors, having those kind of deals in place, like an HOA, for example, where, it's not just, it's one sell that kind of leads to a bunch of other things. So I think that's a really powerful point. And I know we're kind of winding down, and I have a bunch of other questions. I'm trying to think of what direction we want to take it. But I think one thing that would be interesting as kind of your CEO perspective, that really takes like a whole entrepreneurial, you've taken the risk, you've started your own business, there was no validation process. What's kind of the difference between being a franchise owner and then really being a CEO? How risk adverse do you need to be a franchise owner, for example? A lot of people, they want to hedge their risk, like we said. How does someone feel more confident in franchise ownership, but they don't necessarily want to be totally risk adverse?
Well, it goes back to why people like franchising, because it's just less risky than startups, right? In majority of startups are gonna, just not work, or they're gonna fail.
Yeah.
So if you have $50,000, that's your life savings. Are you gonna put that? And I'm a data person,
Mhm.
right? And if you had 50,000 or 100,000 or half a million, right? It's all about risk mitigation
Yeah.
and having a very sophisticated, predictable, calculated approach of where to deploy that.
Mhm.
And that's why people like franchising. And that's where a lot of our franchisees, especially, so that's why people like franchising, and why they like us in that is because we've taken risk mitigation to a whole nother level. Because you're not buying one franchise, you're not buying two franchises, you're buying literally a portfolio of home concepts,
Mhm.
right? So that itself is a whole new level. So you have startups that fail, you have franchising, and then you have what we're doing as far as risk mitigation.
Mhm.
And that's where we're giving franchise owners an opportunity to own multiple services under one brand.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to just not trying to reinvent the wheel, especially in franchising. They already have those systems, those resources in place. I think a lot of times we try to figure out all the answers by ourselves rather than kind of looking for an opportunity like franchising. And one of the things, as we're kind of talking about franchising, it kind of allows you to have those mentorship opportunities to take your career to that next level. And I know doing a little bit of research and you're big on personal branding. I know on your Instagram you have pictures with Grant Cardone, Shaquille O'Neal, I think Mark Cuban as well. So can you kind of speak on? I think it's so important, masterminds, investing to be in rooms with the right people. Did you have any like mentors growing up that kind of shaped who you are? And can you just speak on
Yeah.
maybe the importance of having a mentor?
Yeah, I always say two things. Number one, you should always have a mentor and you should always be mentoring someone in
Mm,
that full circle. You're learning, you're teaching, you're learning, you're teaching, and you should never stop that. But yeah, I read a lot of books as well. I've always surrounded myself with as many mentors as possible, direct and indirect as well. Also, I've been very fortunate to have such great coaches in my life, just from an athletic point of view,
yeah,
that really shaped me a lot. So having that military work ethic really goes a long way, because a lot of my coaches, they came from the military and they ran our practice like a military practice.
yeah.
So that discipline really paved a very strong dividend for me as well.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's really powerful. And, I think I like how you said, you got to learn and then teach. And one of the phrases I kind of learned from a mentor recently is you got to learn to earn to return. And I think, this podcast, a lot of people might say, like, I'm too young, I shouldn't, have a podcast. But really, the point is so that I can have successful people like yourself on, give your perspectives, explore all these different opinions so that someone that is looking for their why, is looking for their purpose, they can explore all these different perspectives, especially people that have achieved a tremendous amount of success. Because it all started, everyone starts from their step one. I think especially a lot of people, they graduated from college, we try comparing ourselves to a CEO, to a professional athlete, someone that's on their step 100, rather than kind of focusing on our own journey, embracing rather than focusing on specific moments, but enjoying the whole process, the whole journey. So I think that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And just to jump in real quick, just to add to that, I always say if you're a runner or you want to start running and you want to get faster, run with someone who's faster than you. You're
Mm,
naturally going to get faster. I promise.
mm,
Right. And it's the same thing. Surround yourself. Who are you hanging out with that night? Who are you spending? Who are your buddies? Right. What are they doing? What type of verbiage and language, vocabulary that comes out of their mouth? Right. How do they spend their free time? That right there has such an impact on who you are going to become. You have to
yeah.
be very cautious to surround yourself with the right-minded people and go to the right events and associate yourself with the right people.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's probably a great way to kind of wrap up the episode with, conquer the mind. You just got to live your life consciously, because it's very easy to subconsciously go through the motions, as we kind of mentioned earlier. And I think, Barry, you've been like a really great example of someone that, I keep saying it, but I think it's important you just try these different things and it led to where you are today, and not trying to figure out all these different things. Do you have any kind of final words? I know you're really big on personal development. How has personal development really helped your journey along the way? Do you have any recommendations for anyone that is trying to find their why, their purpose in life? What have
Yeah.
been kind of the keys for you?
Yep. So over the years and my experience, I kind of came up with a phrase and a philosophy that I've kind of put together that I truly defines how I live my life.
Mm,
And it's one day better.
mm,
Right.
mm,
And every day is a new day with a new opportunity to get better. It's up to us to find the moments in that day to step up and take advantage so we can own that day versus lose that day. So
yeah.
it's being aware of all these moments that typically pass through us, but
Mm,
look at them as opportunity. If you have the right lens, you're going to have breakthroughs,
Yeah.
and you're going to live life on the offensive side versus live life on the defensive side, because your perspective, your willingness, you're eager, your mind's alert and awake and ready to see these opportunities.
Yeah.
So, one day better is the philosophy that I live my life by.
That's powerful. I have goosebumps right now. I know Ed Milet, another big guy in the personal development space, he wrote The Power of One More. And that's really something that I live by. You're always one connection away, one day away, one relationship away, one job away. Or, you're literally just one away from anything once you start to put yourself out there and consciously take action. So yeah, I think that's really awesome. I hope the viewers learned a lot in this episode. I love how we really mixed in some personal development as well, which is really important. I think, it's played a strong role in both of our lives clearly. So I think it's really important for anyone that might be struggling, someone that might be looking for that next level, just important, just look in the mirror and say, life's pretty short. Think about what you want to do in the short time while we are here. What are you passionate about? How do you want to make a difference on this planet? But yeah, that's episode 8 of everyone. Bary, thank you so much for your time today. That's a wrap, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.